People that work on movie sets, what are the most entitled actors you have ever met? I used to work in the industry for a while. Asked some colleagues about the worst people they've worked with. More than one said Steven Seagal was a grade A douchebag. Another said Mike Myers was a nasty piece of work. From what I hear, Myers is really hard to work with because he's an extreme perfectionist and wants everything done the way he has it in his mind. Apparently he re-recorded his entire performance on Shrek because he wasn't happy with the voice. It was a good decision because Shrek's voice is pretty iconic at this point, but still a pretty massive change to demand. I used to work in the film and TV industry. Tyra Banks legitimately will fire some people if they look her in the eye when pacing in the hallway, mostly interns. Ugh. On the plus side, Tom Hanks and David Tennant are genuinely amazing. And Eric Dane, good guy. Once an actress yelled at one of our new writers, and Eric heard about it. He later came by to apologize publicly in front of the whole cast and crew, even though it wasn't his doing. Love that guy. And someone on the crew later tried to poison that actress. So. A professor of mine's sister met Jeff Goldblum in LA, and he got her number. Apparently he called her once at 4 AM to talk about snow. That was the only time they spoke. Worked in the business for about 10 years. I found that reality TV stars were the hardest to work with. I worked mostly with stars from Bravo and they were all entitled and horrible. Celebs I've met that were super nice. Rihanna, Mark Hamill, Tony Todd, Peter Dinklage, and Emmanuel Chikwauri. I realize this isn't movie sets, but I worked the front desk at the most upscale hotel in the city, so I came in contact with a lot of famous people, mostly musicians. We have a giant yearly concert in the hotel's gardens every year, but here's a list of the coolest and worst I've encountered. By far more cool than awful. Journey / by far the biggest of us. Specifically the guitarist. They came into the hotel at 3 AM, and he got the biggest suite in the hotel. The one the Prime Minister and the Queen have stayed in. And he stormed down and said it wasn't big enough and he wants a bigger room. After explaining to him that this was the biggest room, he threw a fit and demanded we build him a bigger room or knock down some walls. Cool guy. Slayer / pretty grumpy. When I told them how much I loved their music growing up, Carrie King just scoffed at me. Demi Lovato walked into the hotel and said, "Oh duck, that I'm not staying here," and slept in her tour bus. Martin Sheen, really reserved, tried to avoid any contact with others. Motley Crue, weirdly very nice and well behaved. Machine Gun Kelly, prick, partied all night and caused a bunch of damage. Tekken 9 Northeast, really nice. Stopped to talk to all the staff. Paul Martin, former Prime Minister of Canada. He was cool, I guess. He shook my hand and that's about it. Justin Trudeau, current Prime Minister. Really nice, nothing much else to say. Queen. Brian May was cool as shit. He talked to me for a while and told me some old Queen stories. Adam Lambert was a bitch. Robert England, super duper cool. I told him Freddy Krueger was the only thing that ever gave me a nightmare as a kid. And he said, "Well, looks like I finally caught ya," in his Freddy voice. Got a pic with him choking me. Massey Gray, amazingly friendly. Talked to me for a good half hour just shooting the shit. Called me a cool cat and gave me $100. 00 tip. Dallas Green, another great guy. He was super busy, but I told him how much Alexis on Fire meant to me. So he talked with me for a bit and signed some stuff. Ron McLean, Hockey Night in Canada, another great guy. Just made fun of Don Cherry. Magic Johnson, absolute sweetheart. I still can't believe I met him. There's lots more, but that's all I can think of right now. I wonder why Demi Lovato didn't want to sleep in that hotel. My friend has worked on Drive Phil for years. He has a no eye contact rule and is apparently one of the nastiest, most self-absorbed people in the industry. I was playing a background doctor on a nerd-type drama a couple years ago. While rehearsing a scene, one of the actresses said to the performer next to me, "Tell him he can't stand there." She was referring to me. I adjusted my position and asked, "Is he okay?" She said, again to the actor next to me, "Tell him I don't care. Just stay out of my way." I asked, "Is there some reason you're not addressing me directly?" And she turned around and walked away. A few minutes late the scene was shot without further incident. I have no idea who this actress is. She wasn't one of the stars. I have no idea who this actress is. Catherine Hegel Mayo. Bam Margera used to frequent a mall where I was managing a store. He was always cool and never seemed pretentious. One afternoon he came in with some friends. And they were all obviously either high, drunk, or both. They were in my store, making a scene, being obnoxious, and started throwing around merchandise. Before I could say anything to them, Bam turned around and yelled for them to stop acting like ducking children and to put everything back where they got it, like good little peons. They did what they were told. He just looked at me and with a long and tired look on his face told me he was sorry about them. So, yeah, Bam seems to be a good guy. Many years ago I worked at Ube in Philly. We had a reservation for Don King one night, but he and his large party didn't show. So about 15 minutes past close he calls and says he is running late, but will be there in a few minutes. Owner asks essential staff to stay, and about an hour later King and his party arrive. His party eats and drinks until after midnight, but when presented with a check King says one of his companions was unhappy with the food. The waiter offers to take it off the bill. King makes snarky remark like, "Of course you will." He ends up leaving no tip on a nearly $2,000 bill while making staff work an extra 3 hours. My sister is a writer and has met and worked with lots of people in Hollywood. I asked her who the nicest celebrity she ever met was, and she said without hesitation, Luke Perry. Have not worked on a movie set, but worked for a cleaning company that was hired by production companies that came to the area to film. Alberta, Canada. We would take care of the homes of some celebs. Tom Hardy was lovely, very down to earth and friendly. Would walk by us in the house and always greet us, and often talk about the weather and other mundane things. Small talk. His whole entourage was friendly. It was actually quite an enjoyable job. Good pay, easy work, nice environment, etc. When we cleaned Leonardo DiCaprio's place, we were specifically told not to talk or look at him by the contact person my boss had. We wouldn't have spoke unless spoken to first, but the specific request for it made us uncomfortable. One time, one of my co-workers had a close encounter with Leo in his bathroom. She was cleaning while he was coming in. She jumped, apologized and said, "It'll get out of your way." She quickly gathered up all her cleaning stuff and hurried out. He was totally silent and turned his head away from her. It was weird. And just a quick side note, we had a specific way wet clean so to not encroach on anyone needing the bathroom. Leo's bedroom and bathroom were done when we certain he was up and about or out of the house, and we always went as fast as we could. The previous cleaning company that was there before us was fired because one of the workers said, "How are you?" or something like that to Leo. That prior knowledge also made it harder working there. Oddly enough though, Leo's entourage had a strange curiosity with us that felt uncomfortable in the opposite sense. Almost like they'd never seen people before. Lol. Really looks like Leo might end up as Howard Hughes as he gets older. Third hand here, so who knows, but a person I know has worked with Kevin Smith. During the filming of Live Free or Die Hard we are shooting Kevin's scenes. I guess the call time was 7 AM. Everyone is ready. Lights on. Sound check. Yada yada. No Bruce Willis. Turns out he was at a nearby bar having mimosas. The aide that went to get him was told, "I'm John McClane. What are they gonna do? Fire me?" Or something to that effect. To Kevin's estimation, $90,000 were wasted in pay, rental fees and whatnot waiting on Bruce to be ready to go. I was worried you were gonna say something bad about Kevin Smith cause he seems like a super cool dude in all the interviews I've seen of him. Faye Dunaway. Faye Dunaway. And I cannot stress this enough. Faye Dunaway. I've had dealings with her personally and can vouch for her entitledness and nastiness. But my friend who works on movie sets has horror stories. Extremely demanding. And also picky. She brings her scales with her everywhere and will make anyone catering weigh it up in front of her. She has a no eye contact rule, which must never be disobeyed. And she also yells. and screams when things do not go her way. Not that it's any surprise to anyone, but Michael Cera is a huge ducking asshole. I watched so many young musicians come up to him during the SX Bob on tour, come up to him to talk about music or gush about how he inspired them, only for him to either brush them off completely, ask them why they're talking to him, or just have security come take them away. Total darn. I worked in fine dining and met quite a few celebs. Shaq was amazingly sweet, and it was awesome to watch him walk through a doorway. He had to almost double over to get through the pretty tall double doors attached to the hotel. Magic Johnson was also pretty awesome to the staff when he came in one night. Those dudes can eat and drop some serious dough. John Voight was a weird one. He introduced himself to me by his full name and complimented me up and down, but not in a creepy way. Just overly friendly and really enjoying the quiet restaurant at breakfast time. He made me genuinely smile, but I have heard he's a bit cuckoo. My idiot AGM didn't recognize Ludacris and sat him in the very front window of the restaurant with his date. I immediately ran over and asked them if they would like to move to a more private booth in the back, which he looked relieved about immediately. He was nice, but reserved and ready to keep his night going. Far as I could tell, CeeLo came through the restaurant and had a dog wrapped in his arms. He just hung out and spoke with some guests of his I think who were staying in the hotel. It looked like business, but he seemed nice enough. My favorite was meeting the entire cast of Alias right after its heyday, including Ben Affleck in tow, and Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Garner were the sweetest of them all. Bradley has ice blue eyes and called me adorable for answering some of his questions about the historical downtown area we were in, and Jennifer ordered over 4 coups of our chowder. She was pregnant, and Victor Garber and the rest just seemed so down to earth. Drew Barrymore cried over her breakfast about the reviews about her directorial debut Whip It, which I thought was a great movie, while Justin Long comforted her, telling her they should just go off to a private island for a bit. It was kind of sweet. Kind of escapist from reality. She is very tiny eye roll. I have more info/stories if anyone wants. My BF also works in one of the biggest ATL recording studios and I worked in film for a while, but not big time. I went to school with a guy who wound up co-starring in a feature film. I saw him in the bar one night. He walked up to this table of women and said, "So, who wants my autograph?" He even had a pen. The women had no idea who he was, because the movie he'd been in was some short-run B-movie nobody had even heard of. Insecure people who gain any sort of fame and recognition are the most cringy of all. I'm tempted to try this sometime. Just ask people if they want my autograph. If they ask who I am, I'll show them a little YouTube video. Lol. I have a story I'm telling secondhand. This was in a hotel, not a movie set. So sorry for breaking the rules. Apparently Sylvester Stallone had been angering the cleaning staff because he was leaving shtis in the shower. When the manager complained to his people about this behavior, his publicist explained that they had to understand that Mr. Stallone was a very busy man. I haven't worked on movie sets, but I have worked in music. J.Lo and Justin Timberlake were by far the most entitled. They threw fits like children and were just overall very unpleasant. Taylor Swift was nice, but her entourage was, at times, unbearable. They had a holier than thou attitude, and her manager acted like a damn dictator. Taylor stopped to take a picture with some employees from one of the restaurants providing food for the artists. Immediately after, her manager yelled to one of her staff members to go over there and make sure they don't use that photo on anything related to the restaurant, social profiles, website, etc. I get it. You have to protect her likeness as a brand, but you don't have to be a giant bitch about it. There is no need to berate and threaten some part-time 19-year-old girl serving food. Chris Brown's entourage was incredibly annoying when it came to the gifting suite. They all wanted to be let in, even though it's just for the artists. Some random ass entry-level label rep expected to be walked to the front of the line. She wasn't even allowed in. His manager even threatened to not have Chris walk through if there was going to be a problem. That didn't work. But in general, the less famous they are, the more entitled they act. The worst offenders are always someone with one hit that you know was only popular because they rode the coattails of whatever trend is hot. They buy into their own hype. I have a friend who works on a lot of movies, so she has worked with a ton of people. From what I remember, here are her thoughts on different people. Jake Gyllenhaal's method acting style and requirements are annoying and strict, so he can often be rude and hard to work with. Lawrence Fishburne initially comes off as a darling and absolutely hates when you call him Larry, but he can swiftly turn that around and be a great guy and your best friend. Keanu Reeves is everything amazing you'd expect him to be, but because he is so personable he doesn't have too many intimate one-on-ones with people. Emma Watson is a bit self-involved. Matt Damon is super cool, funny, and intelligent. James McAvoy is stellar to work with apparently. She also has a huge crush on him. M. Night Shyamalan is apparently an amazing father and one of the best bosses to work for. I've heard several stories about the work he puts in to being a great family man. 50 Cent is goddamned hilarious. He was hanging out on set with my friend and a white girl in a kimono walked by and he yelled out, "Oh shitty, they got the Asian jump off in here." Russell Crowe is apparently super down to earth, but he can get a bit isolated if you catch him while he's focusing. Christian Bale acts kind of like Keanu, but he also can be so focused on his work that he kind of forgets to interact with people. Ryan Gosling is apparently hilarious and lovely. Bryan Cranston is also what you'd expect. He's a super nice guy who acts kind of like a father figure to most people. So to answer your question, Jake Gyllenhaal and Emma Watson are the worst I've heard about so far. Like this video and this good boy will be your mailman forever. We are Redditation, and we Redditate every day. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a wonderful day you magnificent people.